Good morning and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast on this Thursday morning. It is August 5th. I cannot believe it's already August. I'm Erica Jones and I'm joined in the studio today by Calvin Brown and Larry Nyland. We have a whole crew here today, 3 people. We haven't had this many people in the building in general, but you are watching and listening to us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 89.3 Lakes FM, and 88.1 FM The Biff, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 AT&T, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. And, you know, guys, as I was walking in here this morning, I was just thinking, I think one of the greatest things about being in this studio is just regardless of whatever else is going on in the world, when we walk in, we're just in here and, you know, nothing else matters. We just have these 2 hours that we get to do this. And I think that's the case in any TV situation. That's kind of what goes on. So how are you guys doing? What's going on this morning?
Doing really well, Erica. Yes, you have to leave your problems at the door. This is well before your time, Erica, but there was the We Are the World video. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah, I am, actually.
Okay, well, there was a famous thing where they put up a sign outside the door that said, check your egos at the door. You need to also check your feelings, check your problems at the door when we're in a TV situation like this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we don't have any problems around here, but if we did, that's exactly what we would do, right, Calvin?
Exactly. So, Erica, I was thinking about you last night. So, I want to do a little quiz for you here. I want to ask you a few questions, and all I want you to do is just answer these questions. Don't expound upon your answers. Just answer these questions for me, okay?
Can't wait. Let's go.
All right. So, you were born and raised where?
West Bloomfield, Michigan.
And West Bloomfield, Michigan is located outside of what major metropolitan city?
Detroit.
All right. Well, you're doing very well. So you are a huge baseball fan, is that correct?
This is correct.
And where were you last night?
I was at Comerica Park.
And you were there to cheer on the
Red Sox.
Okay. What is this? How does this happen? How did this happen, Erica?
See, Detroit is the big city where I'm from, but Boston is the big city where my dad's from. So when you're born and raised a Red Sox fan, you're born and raised a Red Sox fan. And I don't remember the last time the Tigers were as good as the Red Sox. Ooh, these are falling out as the Red Sox, but it hasn't been a painful season for me to watch my team. Can you say the same?
This has actually been one of the better Tiger years in probably about 7 or 8 years. But it's like, Erica, it's the losing that hardens us, that makes the winning so much better. I mean, if the Red Sox had been a terrible team for the last decade, would you still be a huge fan of them?
Of course. I'm not a fair weather fan. Clearly neither are you, because you still wear your Tigers hat. You know, every other day you walk in with a new Tigers hat. Larry has all of them. He's got the throwbacks, the 4th of July ones, all of them. He's always supporting his team, even more so. You don't see me walk in with Red Sox hats on, so definitely good fan. And I know we need to move on to the headlines, but one thing I will say, and we can get to this later, if you haven't been to Comerica Park recently, and I don't know how long they've had this for, but right above where they have the retired numbers on left field, they have Miggy milestones.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that on TV.
The other night, he hit his 498th home run, and then there was a huge graphic on the screen. I want to say his hits are at 2,944 right now. Calvin's like, I'm not a sports guy. He's just.
It's close. It's around 50.
But yeah, so he home runs. I mean, he's got to get to this. Something, God forbid, bad would have to happen for him not to hit 2 more home runs this season. And hits, he's right on pace. So we'll see. But it'll be interesting to see when he hits 499 if the park will become a little more full.
Well, this is what the problem is. The problem is after today's game against your beloved Red Sox, if he doesn't hit 2 today, they go on the road to Baltimore and Cleveland. And Cleveland is a stadium where he has historically crushed the Indians pitching. So there's a good chance that he's going to come home and that record will have been broken on the road. But
well, that'll be exciting. We'll see. I wish we could talk about baseball all day, but unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately about our headlines, but we have to talk about COVID a little bit. So, Michigan updates COVID-19 guidance for schools. State health officials are recommending that schools, like local communities, implement various COVID-19 prevention strategies based on the level of transmission within their area this fall. So really, this is nothing new. When community transmission levels are moderate to high, school districts should consider implementing more strategies aimed at curbing the spread of the coronavirus, especially if vaccination rates are low in a given community. So on Wednesday, August 4th, which was yesterday, if you lose track of your days like I do, Michigan's Department of Health and Human Services issued updated recommendations for preventing COVID-19 transmission in schools and reducing disruptions to in-person learning. The effective changes, which also included listing prevention strategies in order of effectiveness, were made to align with the latest CDC guidance. So I'm reading this, and it's a headline, but is it really news? I don't know. It seems like it's just evolving and changing every day. But let's take a look a little bit closer at what some of these strategies are. 1, promoting vaccination for eligible staff and students, right? Recommending universal indoor masking for all teachers. See, I feel like that's going to be more of something that's required than recommending, because vaccines, I know, are a little bit more hard to mandate depending on the schools, but masks to me seems like that's not really going to be a recommendation. What do you think about that?
I mean, but that's where their stance is now. It is just going to be a recommendation because they do not want to make it a mandate, because it's just going to lead to a whole lot of problems, and people are going to think we're back a year ago and we're back right in the middle of this again. So it is. I mean, we're going to talk to Pat Watson here coming up later this hour, and we'll get his views on that and where the Bloomfield Hills Schools stance is. But it's a tough situation. I mean, because you got to think about, there's a lot of variables here. There are the teachers who, some of them may have health problems and they're still concerned about it. You've got like a lot of the lower age school kids that are under 12 who are not even eligible to get a vaccine yet. So they're vulnerable. They might have family people that are vulnerable. There's still a lot of things to look at here.
Absolutely. And, as I look at this list, again, like I said, promote hand washing, covering coughs, sneezes. Those things have existed long before COVID. I mean, those are flu season type of things. So that's definitely nothing new. Encouraging students and staff to stay home when they're sick. This one makes me laugh, because when you're younger, you get excited about having a cold and convincing mom and dad you don't need to go to school for the day. But now it's like, I'm sure these people are at a point where they want to go to school even if they're feeling a little sick. And it's so hard because, when you're growing up, if you have a little cold or whatever, you can go to school. It's no problem. You probably should go to school. But now, if you even cough, everyone's going to look at you like you have some severe illness and you're about to kill everyone. So it's really hard. Even, I've been traveling the past couple weekends, and I walked in yesterday. I was talking to Kevin, and I'm like, morning conversation. He's like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, I feel like I can't tell you I'm feeling anything but great, because in today's world, if you say you're feeling anything but great, you need to go home, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So that is just kind of how things are right now, but we have limited knowledge on what's going on with schools other than the headlines we can read. So like you said, we'll be talking to Pat Watson to get a little more insight on that. But moving on to nursing home workers, get a vaccine or lose your job. And this is a big topic we've been talking about. Even yesterday, we had a conversation about this with school teachers or professors at the University of Michigan. So it is definitely not only in nursing homes, but it's going to be an issue for a lot of people. And this is the latest with nursing homes. So the nation's largest nursing home operator told its workers this week that they will have to get COVID-19 vaccinations to keep their jobs, a possible shift in an industry that has largely rejected compulsory measures for this fear of triggering an employee exodus that could worsen already dangerous staffing shortages. Now, in nursing homes, to me, that makes sense. You're working with elderly people. You don't want to get people sick. I feel like that's one of the places where I would have more so expected a mandate like this to happen, maybe even a little earlier. And I would think that people who work in a position like that in nursing homes would be a little more receptive to a mandate like that.
Yeah, my mother is actually not in a nursing home, but she's been in some of these rehabilitation facilities that are linked with nursing homes, and she was in one back in the spring. And I had some conversations with a lot of staff over there, and a lot of them told me that they aren't vaccinated. They aren't planning on getting vaccinated. They don't want to. And you can see how that would create a problem because, I mean, you are dealing with the most vulnerable of the population who, even if they're vaccinated, as we've seen, you can still get crossover contaminations and crossover positives with this new variant that we have out there. And it's a tough situation. But, I mean, if they're laying down the law and saying that they have to get vaccinated, I mean, it's for the overall health of their patients. It's probably a good idea.
Well, this is what's crazy. More than 40% of U.S. nursing home workers have still not gotten the shot. And that number is more than even our nationwide numbers. So, I mean, that is, I'm surprised by that more so than anything. And more than 1,250 nursing home residents across the United States were infected with COVID-19 in the week ending in July 25th, which was double than the number the week earlier. 202 died. That's according to federal data. So these numbers really are on the rise, and it's scary. My mom and I were talking about it this morning, but I feel like until maybe the last week or so, we haven't been hearing as much about COVID like we were a year ago, just because, quite frankly, people are over it. But I don't know. We're going to have to be hearing about it more as we talk more people going back to school, mandatory vaccines, and numbers really are on the rise. So it's definitely scary, definitely a real threat. And, we're just going to have – it's really day by day. I know we've been saying these new mandates, all these changes, we say we'll see what things look like in a week, but it's never a week. It's we could wake up tomorrow and the entire world could be different. And I think that's one thing that we've really, really learned with this whole pandemic throughout the time. And then moving on now to our third headline, the U.S. is requiring COVID-19 vaccinations for foreign travelers. The Biden administration is taking the first steps toward requiring nearly all foreign visitors to the U.S. to be vaccinated for the coronavirus, says a White House official. So this requirement would come as a part of the administration's phased approach to easing travel restrictions for foreign citizens to the country. We don't have a timeline yet that's determined, but they are working on it. And eventually all foreign citizens entering the country with some limited exceptions, are expected to need to be vaccinated against COVID-19. So this will be an issue, I guess. I shouldn't say an issue, but, how bad do you want to travel to the U.S.? We'll see. So the officials spoke on the condition Wednesday to preview the policy under development. The Biden administration has kept in place travel restrictions that have severely curtailed international trips to the U.S. The spread of the Delta variant, citing the spread of the Delta variant of the virus, under the rules, non-U.S. residents who have been to China, in the European area, UK, Ireland, Brazil, South Africa, India, in the prior 14 days are prohibited from entering the U.S. All U.S. travelers, regardless of vaccination status, are required to show proof of a negative COVID-19 test taken within 3 days of air travel to the country. So more with traveling, and I just, it's very interesting to me because I'd love to know more what these exceptions are, because even Canada, which we're 25-30 minutes away from, they've had very, very strict policies on this. But even still, I went to see a doctor maybe 8 months ago now, and she lives in Windsor. Easy commute for her, so she's been able to. So if these exceptions that they're making all over are any work is part of the exception, not that people are commuting to work to the UK like they are to Canada, but I don't know. Every time I hear about these policies with quote-unquote limited exceptions, it always gets me thinking, I scratch my head a little bit, like, what are these exceptions? How serious are they? And who's really mandating them? Because like anything else, there's people who get paid to mandate stuff and really don't care. And then there's people that actually care about mandating stuff. So I don't really know how that's going to be. What are our thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume there would be exceptions for people who, for medical reasons, cannot get the vaccines. But it does remind me of if anyone's ever traveled to Africa. I'm not sure if it's for every country in Africa, but if you are going to take a trip to Africa, you have to go through a series of shots, a series of vaccines that you have to get for diseases that have been eradicated in Africa, and they do not want people coming from other parts of the world and bringing those back there and starting it all over again. So, I mean, we've been fine with it before, but it's just people. There's a fear of how new the vaccine is, and there's like a lot of doubt being placed by certain people, and I think there just reaches a point where you have to say, hey, we've got to trust the science, and we've got to get ourselves out of the situation, because it's crazy that we're going on a year and a half of this now, and there's kind of no sign of a complete end to it.
Kelvin, what do you think? Why don't you chime in a little bit?
What if I could? My mic isn't plugged in.
Well, I guess it is just Larry and I. That is an easy cop-out. No.
But so, Erica, now you are, when are you going back? You're a student at University of Miami in Florida. When are you heading back?
Less than 2 weeks now, actually. It's today, 10 days. Today's the 5th. Wow, 11 days maybe. So relatively soon. That is crazy.
So now it's been announced in Michigan that a lot of the universities, Michigan State, are requiring vaccines for their students, their faculty. Is there any kind of a mandate down there in Florida for University of Miami?
So it's very interesting you say that, because just a couple days ago, the president of my university sent out a notice that basically said they cannot mandate vaccines, which I found very interesting because I go to a private school, and these other schools that are mandating vaccines are public universities. So you'd think that a private institution would be able to mandate that easier than a public institution could. So it was one of those things that I kind of scrolled by and was like, that's weird, but then didn't really do more research on it because I am already vaccinated, so it doesn't really apply, it doesn't concern me, I guess, as much. It doesn't affect me, but I thought that was weird, and I don't know what the legalities of that are. It might have something to do with the FDA approval and emergency use, all of that, but I don't know. I'm vaccinated, I'm going back, and I'm just hoping that everyone else will be, but I don't know. My school was handing them out at the end of the year. It definitely was. If you wanted it, you got it, and really most people did. All people I know, people in my classes, so things were definitely looking good, but we need to stay somewhat local on the Oakland County Megacast. Unfortunately, I'd love to talk about Boston, Miami, all these great places that I like to spend my time, but we are going to take a quick break, and then we will chat with our first guest, who is Brian Calley, the president of the Small Business Association of Michigan. We'll be right back.
To Sophia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Erica Jones, along with Larry Nyland and Calvin Brown. You are watching and listening to us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM, The Biff, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 AT&T, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. I don't know if I'll ever have that memorized. Larry, do you even know it? I know Tyler does. Is he the only one, or do you?
Well, because I don't have it written in front of me, I'm going to say yes, I have it memorized, Erica.
Okay, maybe we'll quiz you next time. But like I said, I've been lucky enough to be able to travel the past couple weekends, and when you're traveling, one thing I like to do is go to small businesses, whether I'm shopping, eating. I like to go to places that aren't big chains, and in Michigan, we have a ton of those places too. So I'm not a traveler in Michigan, but if people are, those are the places they should be seeing. So to talk a little bit more about some of these small businesses, we are now joined by Brian Calley, who's the president of the Small Business Association of Michigan. So good morning, Brian. Thank you for being with us. How are you doing on this Thursday morning?
Well, it is a beautiful day, Erica. Thanks for having me back on the show. It's great to talk with you. And yeah, as we look at what's happening with small business around the country, some industries are recovering really nicely and have adjusted to the environment that we have to exist in these days. But there are other industries that are really, really still struggling, and they tend to be those industries where there's face-to-face interaction with people, the ones where the rules are much more unpredictable. And so a lot of business owners are, I think, getting pretty nervous that they haven't been able to have an open field for economic recovery over the course of the last 17 months until this summer, and then heading into the fall. What is that going to hold? It's a lot of places around the country are starting to reimpose rules and requirements, and it's going to be tough on the smallest of businesses who really weathered the worst of the economic storm as compared to the entire economy.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely scary, and I've been thinking that a lot to myself as we see these restrictions being reimposed in all other places. I kind of wonder, when and if is that going to happen here? But before we continue, I want to ask you, and I'm sure this question has been asked a ton of times, but what constitutes something as a quote-unquote small business?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can look at that. The United States Small Business Administration considers 500 employees and fewer to be small, but that's pretty big, getting up to hundreds of employees. So in terms of our association, you can join our association all the way up to 500 employees, but the vast majority of businesses that consider themselves small have fewer than 100 employees. And in fact, if you were to look at our membership across the board, the majority of them have fewer than 50 employees. So it's everything from a solopreneur that's stringing together gigs to make a living to those who have a team of dozens of people. But generally, it's those that their footprint for how and where they operate tends to be much more local, and the size of the business tends to be described in employment force of dozens rather than hundreds.
Yes, definitely. That does make sense, because to me, 500 kind of seems like a lot. But as we talk about businesses that have less and less employees, that makes me think about staffing issues. And I know probably about a year ago is when we were really talking about unemployment, and everyone just wanted to sit home on their couch and collect unemployment. Now, we're not seeing that as much anymore. Maybe we're just not hearing about it as much anymore. But I can tell you, I know restaurants that I walk into, you'll see every other table's open, and it's not anymore because they have to social distance. It's because they can't seat people because they don't have the staff. So what is that looking like from an inside perspective, and not just someone who's going in and noticing it? How much are these small businesses still struggling to get people to come into work?
It is the number one concern that we hear now that the restrictions, the closure orders in Michigan have been lifted. Staffing concerns have risen to number one by far. We hear this more than any other issue. And unemployment, the way the unemployment system worked was one of the components to that. But if you look at the businesses that were last to come online, the ones that were restricted for the longest period of time, their workforce really had to find something else to do for a living. And so when restaurants, for example, were closed to indoor dining for so long, all of a sudden, finally the government lets them open back up and do so in a full and robust way. Well, all their staff had to find other things to do, and so they're kind of starting from scratch. I've heard a lot of business owners that has described it like being back in startup mode, where they're trying to find that base of employees to even sustain an operation. So you see businesses that are limiting their hours, limiting the days that they are open simply because they can't find enough staff.
So I don't want to put this as choosing the lesser of two evils. I hate that I even just said that, but do you think it's these businesses have to decide what's worse, either staying open for more hours and just not being able to, let me rephrase. When they are open, is it better to seat all your tables but know that you have limited staff and you're not going to be able to serve as many people? The service isn't going to be as good, but at least people will be seated. Or do you block off half your tables and make people wait for longer, knowing that you don't have the adequate staff? Is that something that a lot of restaurants specifically are juggling, and they have to decide which one's better?
Yeah, and restaurants are being very innovative right now, and they're having to figure out when is the most economical time to be open. So, some places specialize more with the lunch crowd or breakfast, and so they might be only open in the beginning of the day because they don't get as much business in the end. Others are set up for weekends, and so they really have to just pick what's most important because they literally cannot staff up. It does look like that most businesses, though, are choosing to make sure that if they can't open with a minimum level of service, whatever they consider to be the minimal level of service that they have to deliver to their customers. If they can't do that, they don't open, and because bad service is just something that's difficult for anybody in the service industry to recover from. So rather than disappoint people who show up, limited hours seems to be utilized a little more often than that. But you also see them pulling out all the stops, and in terms of recruitment and paying higher dollar amounts. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, it would have been unheard of to see places offering in restaurant positions in $20 and $25 an hour, even in fast food. So they're really doing everything that they can do to possibly find people, and it has helped some that the expectation that you be available and looking for work has been re-added in Michigan. So some people on unemployment that were just kind of waiting out the weeks have had to get back into the job market. But ultimately, there's been some fundamental shifts. And some businesses, by the way, are starting to implement technology. I went to one restaurant, for example. They couldn't get enough wait staff. They kind of rolled the dice on a system where you order. There's a QR code. It brings up a website, and you make the order, and then somebody brings your food out to you, but you don't actually see a person until your food's coming out. And that's an example of a technology being deployed right now because of the shortage in the workforce. And who knows? I mean, maybe that will really catch on. And people are businesses are figuring out how to run their businesses with fewer people because they don't have any other choice right now.
I actually think that's really cool, and that makes me think of, those conveyor belt sushi places where you sit around and you just tap on a screen and then the food comes around to you on a conveyor belt. I know, like I said, I see it with sushi. I don't know if other types of places are doing that, but they totally could. You just, the food shoots out to you. But, we talk about all these negative things and innovation, but I'm going to try and make this a little bit positive. Have you seen any of your businesses have success out of this? Have any of them been able to find a silver lining? Or any of them better than they were before? Sorry.
There are definitely businesses that have found new opportunity through the way that the world has changed. There's where people are working, for example. Our IT companies that do networking and office setup and there's endless opportunity because people are getting set up in multiple places, and so there are some that have found that type of opportunity. A lot that got into lines of business tied to the pandemic recovery as well, but that was more a place filler, while whatever else they did before was not as in demand. So yeah, things are changing. Actually, I think that the remote work movement and kind of this abrupt change to remote work, while it's created a lot of turmoil in the marketplace and where and how people consume, it's also given employers who are having a hard time finding employees a wider range of geography to search for employees from. So whereas you might have needed somebody who was within commute distance before, maybe you don't need that anymore in terms of how the job has been restructured. We also see a lot of businesses that are figuring out that they're, the footprint that they're, the space that they're leasing, that they don't quite need as much. But again, there's always two sides to that. So on the one side, somebody can figure out, hey, I can operate more efficiently. I can get employees from across the landscape. I can reduce the amount of size that I'm leasing. But then you got to think of the whole ecosystem of businesses that are there to serve office workers in particular. The lunch crowd or dry cleaners, so many different businesses that simply exist to serve office workers. If those office workers are now at a different zip code every day, you can think of how that, it creates opportunity over here, it creates a lot of turmoil and strife over there. So with this pandemic, and there are silver linings. There are definitely businesses that have found opportunity, but unfortunately, that it's opportunity and on the other side of the spectrum, total financial ruin. So it's tough. But here's the other thing too that I've been really pleased to see is that more people than we've seen in a very long time are turning to entrepreneurialism. So the number of new business starts, and we know this by looking at the tax identification number filings, the new starts of businesses throughout this pandemic has actually been way up, higher than we've seen definitely in the last 10 years. So there are a lot of people that are looking at it like, hey, for a lot of different reasons, I'm sure, but I'm gonna go for it. I got this idea, always been thinking about starting a business, and I'm just gonna go for it. We see it not just higher, but multiples higher than what we see in normal times.
Yeah, Brian, I was just going to mention, I was driving around West Bloomfield area over the weekend, and I could not believe how many new restaurants I saw either just opened or were getting ready to open. And I thought, these people are either the bravest people in the world or the craziest people in the world, or a combination of the two. So what advice do you have for companies, especially in the restaurant industry, who might be opening now, how they can just get through this and survive so a year from now, they're still a good, thriving business?
Well, it's a great question. You alluded to, is this brave or crazy to open a business right now? But in a lot of times when there's a bunch of upheaval, people that really just go for it and put everything into it are rewarded for that. And I think that really the community wants to rally around small businesses as well. If we just have an environment where we can give them a chance to. So the advice and it's not just for restaurants, it's for all business starts, is that you have to be prepared to put everything into it, like your time and your motion and your effort and your determination. You have to have perseverance, just to make it through those initial stages, and to be very responsive to the opportunities. I mean, it's still the case where, it's kind of, entrepreneurs will often say, it seems like the harder I work, the better luck I have, and that's because hard work pays off. And so it won't be easy. It's never easy, but that's really what drives our economy ultimately. Whether you're talking about the corporate giants that exist in our state that rely on a supply chain of very nimble, innovative small businesses that can make the whole supply chain work, or standalone individual businesses. That it's about somebody with an idea and had the guts to take that idea through to create opportunity for their community. So I'm really excited about the startups that we see happening in a lot of different industries. It'll take a while before we see how successful they are, and whether or not their survival rates are higher, lower, or the same as what we normally see. But I think there's an opportunity here, and it's one that I try to make sure that our policymakers understand too. The more stability and predictability that we can provide in terms of public policy, the better the chance that this new surge of entrepreneurialism will have roots to stand. Because nothing will throw a wet blanket on economic activity like uncertainty. The pandemic brings uncertainty. To the extent that we can provide more predictability and certainty to what is going to happen in the operating environment, I think the better these businesses will do.
So talking about these new strategies, this is something that's not really a new strategy, but the internet. Just how much has the online presence for businesses been able to help? And are we seeing some businesses that are only online now?
Yeah, there's definitely, that's a trend that's been happening. It was obviously accelerated very substantially in the throughout the pandemic. Here's the thing though, is that some businesses like Amazon were just really well positioned to scoop up a whole bunch of new business during the pandemic. And so it's not as easy as a retailer. Let's say you got a retailer on Woodward downtown, and their main traffic are office workers that are coming downtown every day to work. Now all those office workers moved, or many of them moved, and maybe permanently. So what do? Most of them already had some online presence, but the idea that you can just get a website, go online, do remote procurement, and you're good to go is not very realistic. I mean, to have that online presence, for somebody to go online to look for something and find a particular small business, it's not particularly likely unless you already had a strong online presence, or you had some other network that could kind of give you a boost as you got started. So there are some great examples of businesses that have a strong online presence. They tend to be the businesses that are tied into some sort of a social responsibility or a social cause that has that kind of viral tendency online. But this to move from a brick and mortar type of base operation to an online, it's not the sort of thing you can just do overnight. And it's tough because you search for something online, and to kind of get through the noise of the giant online retailers to where somebody would even have a shot of considering a smaller business, it's an uphill battle for sure.
Definitely. And with more, sorry, these keep falling out. I'm not used to wearing headphones, but with more of the online presence, a lot of that is not necessarily online stores, but just being able to do stuff on Zoom. And businesses are giving up office space, which then I guess can help because it makes them have to pay less rent for their employees. So do we think this is a trend we're going to see moving forward of businesses realizing, hey, we don't need to be paying rent in places if we have all our employees work online? Do you think that's going to be something that we continue to see, or do you think they are eager to have that face-to-face interaction and it's worth it for them to be paying rent places?
I think we're going to see a transition here in the future where a lot of work stays remote that has been remote this whole time. So employees clearly have a preference for remote work, and employers are going to have to respond or be responsive to that. So you'll see hybrid systems, you'll see kind of hoteling type situations where people can be present at the office. Some positions do require more on-site work, but what I expect to happen is that there will over time be kind of a center of gravity, and people will start to migrate more back to the office when the pandemic is further in the rearview window. And that's just because that's where the spontaneous interactions happen. That's where deals get done. That's where people collaborate. They get to know each other and trust each other and form relationships that go beyond just the work at hand at that moment. So I think that that you're going to see more in the future than in the past, but I think probably a lot will stay remote, and then gradually people are going to figure out that, hey, it's better for my career learning this line of business, kind of advancing through, forming relationships with the team that I work with if I do more work in person. So I think you'll see kind of a curve where it comes back some, but I don't think it'll ever be the same. I think downtown areas in particular are going to have to be reimagined. A lot of this office space that exists today is going to have to turn into something else. There's some work on what's essentially like the historic tax credit, the federal historic tax credit, where maybe they could use that for conversion of office space into residential in downtown areas. And that really, on its face, that might make a lot of sense. You think about these areas, it probably would be better for them to have more people permanently living or living full-time downtown than to have office space where people are driving there every day. So there are ideas, there are ways that we can go. Every answer for every community is going to be a little bit different, but I think those communities that anticipate this, that put teams together to work on it and think through what's our best step forward here, and then also to be intentional about connecting people whose opportunity has gone away from the pandemic to those places where more opportunity was created. In the last Great Recession, I think that our state did not do very well and connect. The world changed, globalization changed, offshoring, a revolution in productivity. And so a lot of people, what they did for a living was no longer necessary for the process, or at least not here. And so there wasn't really a strong public policy answer for how do we connect people who lost opportunity to, the world has changed, where the opportunity went. And that could happen again if we're not very intentional about making those connections.
Yeah. Well, Brian, thank you so much for talking with us, giving us all this insight. We do have to move along, but it's always great talking to you. We really appreciate it. Is there any final things you want to share about small businesses moving forward, thoughts, feelings, anything we should know?
I just want to advocate that people ask, what can we do to support small business? There's something that every single individual person can do, and that is get your vaccine. That protects us from a future of closures and lockdowns and regulations that are expensive. They're harder on small businesses than big businesses. And I understand it's a personal choice, and everybody's got to make their own personal choice. But I'd ask you to please, on behalf of the of small businesses that really can't afford another set of lockdowns and closures, so please consider doing what you can do to limit the spread of COVID-19.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day. We are now going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back on the Oakland County Megacast.
Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to
Michael,
win.
you can go ahead and unmute for me.
Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get vaccinated?
I'd like to go to these school dances and spring break to have fun.
I want to be in person for college next semester.
I want to get out of this pandemic.
I wanted to protect the people around me.
Why did you get vaccinated?
Because I'm really looking forward to hanging out with my friends.
I just want to go to a show, dance around, not have to worry about anything, feel like I'm free again.
So we can not miss out on the best years of our life.
How does marijuana affect the teen brain?
Our brains are still developing into our 20s.
With regular use, marijuana can affect teen brain development.
It can affect our brain's circuitry and blood flow and impair thinking, learning, and memory function,
which could hold us back from reaching our potential.
Don't let marijuana mess with your brain.
Get the facts at michigan.gov/drug-free.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Erica Jones with Calvin Brown and Larry Nyland here in our studio with us this morning. So as we were talking about at the beginning of our show, I was out at Comerica Park last night and the night before. Can't go today because the game's at 1, and we're here, but it is okay. And earlier this week, Chris Ilitch and some of our favorite Tigers players were at the Historic Hamtramck Stadium for a big announcement. But to tell you about that announcement, it's not going to be me. We have with us Mike Wilson to tell you more. He is the president of Friends of the Historic Hamtramck Stadium. So, good morning, Mike. How are you today?
Hey, I'm terrific, Erica. Good morning.
Good morning. So, tell us about this announcement.
Yeah, we this past Tuesday we had our groundbreaking event ceremony. It was a celebration of sorts for our grandstand development project. It's a $2.6 million collaborative. And so we had the Tigers on hand, which, as you mentioned, Chris Ilitch was there. We had Wayne County Commissioner Warren Evans. Brenda Lawrence was here, our Congresswoman. We had, there was a lot of dignitaries there that were on the podium and spoke that day. And it was a terrific event for the community and the region as a whole, to see one of 5 Negro League stadiums in the country starting to literally grow roots and come back to life.
So, as you just said, it's one of only 5 Negro League stadiums that is still left standing. But as the years go on, there's fewer and fewer people around who even got to see the Negro Leagues. So, before we continue, can you just explain what exactly the Negro Leagues were and why they came to be originally?
Yeah, the Negro Leagues was provided an opportunity for Negroes or African Americans at that particular time to be able to get paid playing the game that they loved. These individuals were immensely talented and gifted, and during the segregation era, they were not able to be able to play because of discrimination or racism at that particular time. Now, these guys were good enough to play, but they didn't have the opportunity. So an individual by the name of Rube Foster, who's kind of the father of black baseball, in 1919, he ended up coming to Detroit actually, and he came and saw the Detroit Stars play a game on April the 20th at Mack Park in 1919, and he was enamored by that particular team, the Detroit Stars, and he ended up putting together a conglomerate of teams throughout the Midwest and the South at that particular time that became the Negro National League. They started their inaugural season in 1920. So last year, May 15th, was the 100-year anniversary of the Negro National League, of which the Detroit Stars were one of the inaugural teams.
Yes, so next week, the New York Yankees and the Chicago White Sox are going to be playing a game at the Field of Dreams Stadium in Iowa, and this is where we know the movie Field of Dreams was filmed in 1989. So what about going to the Tigers and saying how it would be like for them to be able to play a game at Hamtramck Stadium wearing the Detroit Stars uniforms? Has that been discussed? Is that something we can see happening?
That conversation hasn't taken place yet. I was kind of laying some subtle hints out there Tuesday with Chris Ilitch, but we've got a lot of different things in the works as far as the opportunities for baseball to be played, even an opportunity for, I don't know if you're aware of it, but the Michigan Wolverines, they play a benefit game every year against Vanderbilt University, and it's kind of a benefit tribute game to David Johnson, who was the first African-American athletic director at an SEC school. He was at Vanderbilt, but David is from Detroit. And he passed away a couple years ago, and they designed this benefit game to be played in Nashville, and also one to be played in our area, for which Michigan and Vanderbilt will compete. And we're looking at the possibility of those teams competing at Hamtramck Stadium for a benefit game, and of course, donning or playing with the Negro League uniforms on.
So, Mike, now the renovations that did begin this week, could you get into some detail on exactly how the stadium's going to change and how it's going to be more friendly for the fans that are going to come out to the stadium?
Yeah, the grandstand, which was again built, the stadium itself and the grandstand, which was built originally in 1930, has been dormant for close to 30 years now. So this rehabilitation project for the grandstands, again, is an incredible collaborative. It will seat between 2,500 and 3,000 fans. There will be brand new roof. It will be new masonry in the front in terms of the brick at the backstop in the front. They'll have also new seating. The structure in terms of the pillars, all of that will be repainted. We'll also have new ramps put in, and also partition seating, box seating in the front. We'll be adding 3 new rows of partition seating on each corner in the front for ADA handicap seating. And so it's going to be a tremendous facelift for the stadium as a whole. Last year, during COVID, we resurfaced the entire field itself. So the field is a natural turf field, and we resurfaced it with new sod, new seating in the outfield, which has Kentucky bluegrass, which is what Major League ballparks have. And then our clay sand mix in the infield is made of a composition called Dura Edge, out of Pennsylvania, which is resident in 18 different Major League ballparks across the country. So we're talking about a state-of-the-art facility for baseball here in Hamtramck and the Detroit metropolitan area.
Yeah, the amount that was listed, it says about $2.6 million of funds are available for the renovation. Now, how did you come to garner those funds from the Wayne County and from the Detroit Tigers? Did they reach out to you? Did you have to reach out to them? Did it take some years, or how'd that work?
Yeah, it's taken a few years, especially with the fact that COVID, really pushed us back anywhere from 12 to 18 months. This project was supposed to be closer to completion last year. But even with that, we're still looking at, even with the grandstand and the field rehabilitation project being completed this year, we're also trying to, as we speak, also add state-of-the-art dugouts, foul poles, fencing, border fencing around the dugouts and outfield fencing. And then we also would like to implement custom bathrooms or restrooms. And then hopefully we're hoping next year to also add lights. I don't know if you're aware of it, but the first night game in the state of Michigan actually took place, believe it or not, at Historic Hamtramck Stadium, not at the old stadium or Tiger Stadium. It took place at Historic Hamtramck Stadium, but those lights were torn down, I believe, in the 50s. And our goal is to also implement lights next year for that stadium.
One of the famous players that played under those lights was Turkey Stearns. Not only is that a great name, but a great story behind. Could you just tell us a little about Turkey Stearns? I saw his daughter was over at the ceremony the other day.
Yes. Norman Turkey Stearns is one of the greatest baseball players in the history of baseball, for that matter. I mean, he's one of 17 players that played at Historic Hamtramck Stadium that are in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Norman Turkey Stearns played for the Detroit Stars for the bulk of his career, but which started in 1923 with the Detroit Stars. But Norman Turkey Stearns played for Detroit Stars, for the Chicago American Giants, and he played for the Kansas City Monarchs. And Norman Turkey Stearns actually has more home runs than anybody in the history of the Negro Leagues, the records show. Now, many people talk about the major exploits of Josh Gibson being a home run hitter and saying that he hit home runs as far as Babe Ruth, which he did. But in terms of total home runs, Norman Turkey Stearns won 7 home run titles, batting titles in the Negro League. So he was a prolific player, to say the least.
From those games, what kind of history is still around? I mean, are there actual box scores that were filled out at the time? Are there photographs? Is there any film footage of the Negro League games, especially the ones that were played at Hamtramck Stadium?
Yeah, they didn't get the consistent coverage from in terms of the media or recording of their records and their games. Like I said, box scores on a consistent basis. So some of those records are somewhat scattered, but I think you may have learned that this past spring, Major League Baseball now is adding the Negro League records to Major League Baseball records. So those players that played during that era, those records are being added to the Major League Baseball records and tabulation. So, but as a whole, as you mentioned, even video footage is very, very hard to get, very scarcely available. I saw a piece that Ken Burns did a couple years ago that has some footage, but overall the footage is very, very hard to find. It's extremely scarce, unfortunately, because again, those guys were immensely gifted and talented.
Something that I don't think people realize is that Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier in the major leagues, but he started out in the Negro Leagues. Did he ever play at Hamtramck Stadium?
You know what? He didn't, unfortunately. Jackie played an exhibition, I believe in 1951 at that particular time, where the Negro Leagues was still in existence here in the area, but the games were being played at what's called DeQuinder Park at that particular time. And Jackie played an exhibition when he was with the Dodgers at DeQuinder Park. So unfortunately, yeah, he didn't get a chance to play at Historic Hamtramck Stadium, but the Satchel Pages, the Cool Papa Bells, Josh Gibson, yeah, they all played there. Yeah.
So one thing I want to ask you, and this is a little bit off topic, backtracking, but more personal about you. How did you originally get involved and become the president of Historic Hamtramck Stadium? Because obviously this means so much to you and all this great stuff that's happening. So I just want to know a little more about your personal background in this and how much it really does mean to you because of that.
Yeah, Erica, originally I was born in Hamtramck. My dad used to take me to, and my dad coached in the city of Detroit. He had a cup of coffee in the Negro Leagues, but he coached in the city of Detroit for over 40 years. He coached myself and many individuals in the city of Detroit in Little League, and he coached semi-pro. But I was fortunate enough to be drafted by the Detroit Tigers in 1976. Played minor league ball for a few years and played over in Mexico for a couple years. But I migrated to Southern California when I got signed, so I could work out in the off season and play winter ball. But I came back home in 1997 and coached for years while I was in California and coached here high school ball. And I started a baseball academy. We ran it for 7 years. It was called the Woodbridge Baseball Academy near Wayne State University. And when that closed down, and we had to close it down, we lost our facilities in 2016. But Gary Gillette, who's the board chairman for the Friends of Historic Hamtramck Stadium, asked me to come on the board, and I was delighted to come on board and be a part of the initiative. And then they asked me to be president about a year and a half ago. And so last year, I spearheaded the rehabilitation project for the field, and now I'm continue to work to that end. So yeah, that's how I got involved, and that's my background.
Well, I'm glad I asked you that because that is a fantastic background and I did not know all that. But now I have to ask you just a couple more things before we have to let you go. But are you still a Tigers fan? And if so, have the last few years been hard for you to see such an incredible, historic team be in kind of a slump like this? Or are you used to always having to see your teams be high and low? What is that like for you?
Yeah, being a former player, being involved in the organization, I've got an affinity for the Tigers and really want to see them do well. People like Willie Horton, who took me under his wing when I signed many years ago, and Gates Brown and some of those old timers, have really instilled in me to be really a diehard Detroit Tiger fan. So even seeing some of the African American players come up, like Akil Badu, which got to meet at the ceremony, the groundbreaking ceremony the other day. I'm excited about these young players coming up. Casey Mize and Schoolboy the pitcher, and Manning. I mean, they've got a great group coming up, and some in the minor leagues right now. So this particular region has got to be extremely excited about what the Tigers are doing. And the fact that I believe that they're gonna really turn things around in the next few years. They're gonna be fighting and competing for a pennant here in Detroit.
I agree completely, and I will say I'm a huge Red Sox fan, but I did go earlier this season when the Yankees were in town, and Casey Mize was facing Garrett Cole, and Casey Mize took the win, so that was exciting. If you're a rookie and you can beat a guy like that, you're doing something right, but really good things to come.
True.
Absolutely, always, and I want to see anyone beat the Yankees, but really good things to come with that. It's been so great talking to you. Always so great to talk about baseball and all these great things happening with Historic Hamtramck Stadium. So thank you so much. Good luck with everything, and we cannot wait to see this success continue.
Thanks, Erica and Larry. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and be able to discuss the stadium and the progress that is currently taking place.
Yes, and we look forward to touching base again soon. I'm sure we'll be in contact for sure and have you back on again soon. So thank you so much. And we're going to take a quick break now and then move on to the second half of our show.
Trevor Project is sharing how you can support LGBTQ youth who may be at
Thank you,
risk.
Michael. You did a
It's
great
simple.
job. You have a good day.
Just show them that you care. CARE. Connect. If you noticed any warning signs of suicide from someone you know, reach out to them.
Ask directly, are you thinking about killing yourself? It might be challenging, but talking about suicide is proven to reduce risk.
Respond. If they open up to you about their suicidal ideation, honor that trust by responding with compassion and empathy.
Empower. Talking openly is a great first step, but now you can empower them with the information and the support they need to improve their situation.
Learn more about how you can show them you care and help prevent LGBTQ youth suicide. Visit trvr.org/care.
To Sofia and Gabriel, even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. You're watching and listening to us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM The Biff, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 AT&T, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. I'm Erica Jones, of course, with Larry Nyland and Calvin Brown pressing the buttons for us over here. So, I can't believe it, but like I said earlier, it is August. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think I like it. I'm not ready for summer to wrap up, but you blink and it is. So, I'm heading back to Miami and people all over Michigan, students heading back to school. So, we're now joined by my former high school principal, Mr. Pat Watson. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, and I have to tell you, I don't know if you remember. You definitely do remember, but when I graduated high school back in 2018, you gave a speech, and the first thing you said was make your bed every single morning. And ever since I graduated high school, I have made my bed every single morning. I take your advice, and a lot of my friends that I graduated with have done the same, and it's just made my life so much better. So I think that is advice that everyone should have. I hope you guys make your bed every morning, because even if you have the worst day in the world, you come home to a made bed. And you're not going to have the worst day in the world if you make your bed. But anyway, so it's now been a year and a half of you as the superintendent of Bloomfield Hills. How has that been? How does that feel?
Intriguing, interesting, challenging, ever-changing. And like you, I also make my bed. I wish I could take credit for that inspiration, but it actually comes from Admiral McCraven. And I was quoting him in a speech he gave. So it is good advice. So you've accomplished something, nothing else that day. So it's been intriguing. I think one of the highlights for me coming over is that there are so many former students that either work or live in Bloomfield Hills that I've reconnected with. So it's been a reunion with probably over 50 of my former students, dating back all the way to the class of 1995 and moving forward. So that's been a lot of fun reconnecting.
So we know you were in West Bloomfield for a while. You're the superintendent of Bloomfield Hills now, but let's go way back. Tell us, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Ann Arbor. Lived most of my life there. I also spent 3 years, about 2.5 years in Canada. But I am an Ann Arbor native. It was a great place to grow up in the 70s and 80s, a great place now. And, I definitely had an amazing experience in school. I graduated from Ann Arbor Huron High School in the 80s, and, things were, you'll hear people my age say, I walked through the snow backwards and it was so difficult. No, it really wasn't that difficult in the 80s. There wasn't a lot to worry about. We worried about the Cold War. But then Rocky beat Ivan Drago, so that solved that problem. We worried about POWs and MIA, but then Chuck Norris went to Vietnam in the movie and rescued everyone. Like it was a simpler time with no social media and just not a lot of pressure. I look at the levels of anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideations with our students right now, and there's just so much pressure on all of our students to do well in school and get into a good college and get that ideal dream job. And everyone's on social media. It seems like living their best life is what our kids see. It's just, there's a lot of stress on our students now.
Yeah, 100%. And I envy you for growing up in those simpler times, honestly. There are so many times that I think to myself how much easier life would be without social media. And then, there's, of course, the argument of, oh, well, you can just delete it. Yeah, you can delete it, but then you deal with feeling left out for other reasons. So, I don't know. It's a lot, definitely. But going back to what's going on today, it's been almost 2 years since you accepted your job as the superintendent. So, what were some superstitions, or not superstitions, I don't know what I'm thinking. What were some assumptions that you had about that job before you started? And looking back now, almost 2 years later, is there anything that you're like, wow, I can't believe I thought this was what it was going to be like? And obviously with COVID, I'm sure there's a lot of that, but just in general, what were your thoughts 2 years ago and what are they now about this job?
So I came in with some really well-defined plans of what I wanted to do in my first 90 days on the job. And I had this huge plan and I'm excited and I'm like, I'm going to get it done. Like I had tons of plans. Well, 59 days in, we shut schools. And the majority of those plans have stopped. So people will ask me, what's it like to be a superintendent? I say, I don't really know. Because what I thought the job was going to be, COVID has changed that. So once we kind of have a handle of COVID, I can tell you what the job is going to be like. I'm proud of the things we've been able to accomplish, our curriculum work, our social emotional learning. We passed a $200 million bond, all this going on with COVID. So I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish. But a large part of my day is reading, researching, talking to other school districts about COVID mitigation strategies, instructional models within, those confines. So I'm excited for one day of having the opportunity to really see what the job is like when COVID isn't one of the primary things that we're talking about.
Definitely. And one thing I can say, I know that as a principal, you were always very good at having those interpersonal relationships with students, and even things as simple as you knew students' names. A lot of principals don't really care, but being superintendent now, you're not going to know the names of every kid in your school district, and obviously the relationships can't be as personal. So do you miss those personal relationships that you were able to have when you had maybe 1/5 of the students, or even less than 1/5 as you do now? Or how have those relationships changed, and what do you do to try and maintain those relationships?
So definitely that's an important part, right? That's, to me, I've always been about personal relationships with staff and students and investing time there. So prior to COVID, majority of my focus, my first 59 days, was being in buildings and shadowing students in every building, and really seeing from a student perspective what it's like in building those relationships. It was a little more difficult, obviously, when school wasn't in session. And then when we came back, I visit buildings as often as possible. We also have board interns and a student advisory council that works with our board interns. So I am getting to know them extremely well and meet with them bi-weekly. And so that's been something I've really enjoyed doing. But knowing that this school year, again, who knows, everything can change with COVID. But right now, like all of us in Oakland County, we're planning to return that first day of school. So I'm looking forward to pick up where I left off and to continue to build those relationships with students moving forward.
So during the height of the pandemic, when school was completely virtual, Bloomfield Hills started school at 9 a.m., which was a lot different than the usual start time at 7:25 a.m.
Right.
So what was the feedback from students and parents on this? Why was that decision made? And what are the plans for a start time going into the next school year?
So the students loved it, right? You're starting school at 9, you're getting done at 2:10, 2:15, same time you would otherwise, which was great. And part of the pandemic learning of last year, we were allowed flexibility. There was no mandated amount of time you had to be in the building, no hours, no days. And so that was very beneficial. Going into next school year, we've adjusted the start time from 7:25 to 8 o'clock. And that is something we feel will be beneficial for students. We're also going to be offering quite a few online classes and we have block scheduling, which I know you're familiar with, online courses for students first and second block, so that they can kind of do them at their own leisure and then have the opportunity to come into school even later. Ideally, what the students would have liked is keeping the 9 o'clock start and still getting out around 2:15, 2:20. But now that the mandated days and hours are back for next year, that's impossible. So once we share with the students that we can't keep the same hours, we can start at 9, but we're not going to get out until roughly 4. The response, well, we don't want that. That's not what we're looking for. So we're going to keep looking at it. I think the goal is to see if we can do an 8:30 start a couple years down the road when we reconfigure our K through 12 buildings. But at least for next year, from day one, it will be an 8 o'clock start instead of a 7:25 start for our students.
I do think that's interesting because even before COVID, I always thought to myself, I started high school at 7:10, and I've never heard of a high school starting earlier than that. I mean, we started earlier. Even 7:25, I think, is earlier than most schools start. So West Bloomfield 7:10 was very early, but I was always okay with it because we got out at 2, and I had the whole day. So yes, it sucked waking up super early, but if someone would have said, okay, we can start school at 9, and then you're going to have to get out at 4, I would have never done it. I was done with my extracurriculars at 4, and then you still have the night to do whatever you want. So that was definitely something that was fantastic. And it's just so crazy you're saying that you're going to offer more online classes. I can't imagine having online classes when I was in high school. But what is that? You said students are going to have the opportunity to come in later, but not everyone has a car, and there are underclassmen that don't drive yet. So what's that going to look like for either underclassmen or students that don't have cars? Is there going to be some type of place, I don't know exactly the ins and outs of this big, beautiful building you guys have, but will there be places if they still need to come at the start time that they can hang out and do their online classes in the building rather than having to drive themselves in later?
Absolutely. That option is still come in the building and do the work because you need to take the bus in the morning or your ride has to be there first thing in the morning. That opportunity is still going to be there. There's no question about that. So that's something that is going to be available for our students. And, you think 7:10's early, years ago when you were in elementary school, there used to be a 0 hour. So we actually had the first class of the day at 6:05 in the morning. For those who wanted to take that additional hour, which was one of the reasons there was a move to block scheduling, was to give students more option and not bring them in so early. But the research is clear, right? We know that, based on sleep patterns and circadian rhythms, that students should be starting school a little later. But how late you go, there's always trade-offs. And like you said, yeah, it was early at 7:10. I mean, it's the earliest one in Oakland County, but you also got out the earliest, which allowed you to extracurriculars earlier, get home earlier, go to a job earlier. So there are some trade-offs with it.
Now, this is going off topic a little bit, but I want to talk about something a little more lighthearted because we spend so much time talking about the pandemic and all you have to deal with, but talking about times that school gets out, extracurriculars. What a lot of people might not know is that you were a successful coach during your time at West Bloomfield, and particularly with baseball. So tell us about that. Do you miss that ever? You have to.
I do. So I was involved in educational athletics, from 1990 all the way until 2019. Even when I took the position here in Bloomfield Hills in November of 2019, I was still coaching at West Bloomfield during that time. So I do miss that aspect. I'm officially retired from coaching. I enjoyed coaching, in West Bloomfield for a very long time, from 95 all the way until 2019. It's something I could see in retirement and volunteering and getting back into that. I have fond memories. I can't tell you what I had for dinner a week ago, but I can go through the semifinal game pitch by pitch of 2001 and tell you what happened in every inning like it was yesterday. So it definitely has left a memorable impression with me in my life.
And what about your childhood as a baseball player? Do you remember playing high school baseball? Were you good?
I do remember. I was great at keeping stats.
What position did you play?
Pitcher and third.
Okay.
The coach called me the up 10, down 10 guy. If we were up 10 or down 10, it was my opportunity to put down the scorebook and go into the game. So
I love it. Oh my gosh.
I understood what needed to be done. I could tell you what needed to be done. I couldn't always athletically execute at the level of some of my classmates, put it that way.
Okay, so you're a better coach and superintendent.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, just a couple more things with COVID. But what are your thoughts on the CDC recommending masks for students? Have you declared what that's going to look like in the fall for in-person? And, what's your reaction to Michigan's response that they're going to be recommended but not required to wear masks?
Yeah, so we sent a letter out on June 30th letting the community know that we were recommending but not mandating masks following the CDC recommendation. MDHHS has come out, has recommended the same thing. And there's all kinds of talk about this should or shouldn't happen. To me, from where I sit, I'm not a health expert. And, if these recommendations were intended to be mandates, then I would expect our healthcare providers to do what's expected and mandate them. I'm watching as other states, and I know Michigan's, COVID numbers are a little lower, but I'm watching other states and their governor and their health departments look at their data and mandate masks. We've seen that in Oregon. We've seen it in California. We've seen it in Illinois and Louisiana just this week. And I understand in Michigan, the governor can't make that. But we also know that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and then here locally, our Oakland County Health Division can mandate masks. And if that is the intent of the rule, I would hope they would do so. You know, I've taken a million college classes. None of them were in epidemiology or virology. And I get that individuals are coming forward that have those degrees saying, yes, it should be mandated. The expectation is the school should mandate it. Well, then that's what we expect our healthcare providers to let us know that it should be done. I've got parents like every community that feel they should or shouldn't. But right now we are telling everyone that we are recommending but not requiring. And everyone wants to know, well, is that going to stay? Will it be that way September 8th, the first day of school? Will it be that way tomorrow? Each day with COVID, unfortunately, is a new day. So there is not one thing that is going to change or not change. Everything is always open for research, investigation, and decision-making on a daily basis, which is right. As a parent of 3 myself, that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear decisions have been made, it's not going to change, you know what the school year is going to look like, and you can move forward. But unfortunately with COVID, we don't have control of that. That's not the position we're in.
Pat, so you have reached maybe what is the pinnacle of working in the education department, being a superintendent. But at what point did the teaching bug hit you? Were there any teachers that inspired you that said, "Hey, that's what I want to do for a career"?
Oh, I had some great teachers that really inspired me. Starting in 8th grade, whether I had Mr. Cantrell, Dottie Davis, Mr. Smith. I mean, I was very fortunate to have teachers that cared about me, that looked out for me. I can't tell you maybe what I learned in some of their classes, but I can tell you what they did for me on a personal level and the stories they shared that, you know, made my day better. Or, you know, the times they sought me out in the hall because they knew it was going to be a rough week for me to check on me to see how I was doing. So I wanted the opportunity, you know, starting in 8th grade where I made the decision I want to grow up to be a teacher because I want to have the opportunity to give back and care for students the way some staff members did for me.
And now being a principal and being the superintendent, what do you see in young students now? Is wanting to be a teacher, is that still a goal of a lot of students? Is it on the back burner? I mean, how do you inspire young people to go into this field?
It is definitely on the back burner. Education is really changed. I feel I'm part of the last generation of, you know, the 30 years and out, where you got a job as an educator, you're going to stay 30 or more years, and then you'll decide to retire. It's become very transient. People not only leave the profession quicker than before, but people also will leave for non-educational jobs, or they'll leave for a different district. I know as principal at West Bloomfield High School over a 6-year period, over 50% of the staff I hired because there are that many people that changed. I think back to my first decade when I was there and almost no one left. There was an occasional retiree, but the idea that somebody would leave and go to a different district for a job didn't happen. That's commonplace now. And I think it's going to be really difficult to attract young people to the profession. You can look at the pay, and that was never too big an issue before. But then you had the other things, like you had a pension. Well, you don't really have that anymore. You had health insurance you didn't have to pay for. Well, now you have to pay for your health insurance. Respect for teachers, I think, was a lot higher when I first got into the profession compared to now. And class sizes were smaller. In a lot of places, they're larger now. So I think for a lot of young people, they see all these additional challenges that didn't exist before. And there's more opportunities elsewhere, they believe, and so they're choosing to go elsewhere. The days of going to a job fair and having it packed and having so many candidates you don't know which one to select are also over. I know we're interviewing now, and based on the lack of applicants, we're going to start potentially with a couple positions with a sub in place, potentially, depending on what we can do this last month.
What I will say is, As hard as that is to hear, and I'm sure for you as someone that's so passionate about this, if there is less interest, I would hope and think that the people who are interested are really, really passionate about it and not just doing it because it's an option. So I definitely think that that can be helpful for students, for knowing that the people who are in the classrooms are really going to impact them and be inspiring. Just before we let you go, is there anything else that you want to share? I know we diverted a little today and talked about some other things. So is there anything else important for the people of your students to know, or just about the plans to go back in the fall, even though they're changing every day?
just to stay tuned, to be flexible, to understand we're trying to make the best decisions we have with the information we have available, and that regardless of the decision, we understand that people are going to be upset, right? It doesn't matter what the decision is, it's going to be upset. So I'll share that. And then on a different note, it's great seeing you again. Please tell your family I say hello, and I hope everyone's doing well. It's been a couple years.
I know I will, absolutely. So nice catching up. So you too, thank you so much, and have a great it's Thursday, so I can say have a great weekend. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, and we will be right back to talk to Rich Studley, who's the president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior. These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different. One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games? Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Today, it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM The Biff, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 on AT&T, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. I'm Erica Jones, joined by Larry Nyland and Calvin Brown pressing the buttons for us. So now we are going to talk more about small businesses in Michigan, and here with us to do so, we have Rich Studley, who's the president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. So good morning. How are you today on this Thursday morning, almost afternoon, actually? Wow, it's 11:20. 11:30 almost. I still feel like it's 7 a.m.
Great to be back on the Oakland County Megacast, and it's sunshine and blue skies here in Lansing, so it's going to be a great day.
Love to hear it. So even though we have talked to you before, just give us again a little introduction of, tell us about the Michigan Chamber of Commerce and what services you can offer to your members.
The Michigan Chamber of Commerce is a statewide business organization. We represent companies of every size and type, not just in Oakland County and Southeast Michigan, but across the state. Michigan Chamber members employ over 1 million Michigan residents. And we were established in 1959 basically for one reason, and that is to help businesses be successful. How do we do that? We protect, we connect, and we strengthen businesses.
So what are some of your members saying these days about how they're feeling with the current state of the economy and the place we are now in this pandemic?
If we were talking a month ago, I think there would have been a great sense of optimism. There are a lot of states across the country that have good local chambers and good state chambers, but in many states, the state is mostly dependent on manufacturing or agribusiness or travel and tourism. I think a great blessing for Michiganders is that we have all three. We're still a leading manufacturer. We are in the center of the Great Lakes. We have 4 seasons, so travel and tourism are a very important segment of our economy, and so is agribusiness. I think there's a sense that we've been through a lot together over the past 12 to 18 months. I do think that if you were talking to small businesses or medium-sized companies or even major corporations today, there's somewhat of a concern about the Delta variant and how are we doing in the fight against COVID-19. I can tell you that even before COVID, responsible businesses, successful businesses understand that one of their most important resources are their employees. Employers or members of the Michigan Chamber have worked hard for decades to have a safe workplace. COVID threw a lot at us in terms of the impact on employees and employers. We're starting to turn the corner again. I think the challenge we face now is an old lesson, which is even more true today, that economic or political uncertainty is a jobs killer. And right now we have a lot of economic uncertainty again for employees and employers. There's been a lot of discussion. I was listening to the earlier segment about masks. Will we be wearing masks when children return to school, when employees return to work? Will there be more government mandates? The governor faced an extraordinary challenge that no one could have imagined. I think especially early in the governor's response to COVID, the steps that were taken were necessary and important, but now we can look back over a year and see the devastating economic impact of a statewide shutdown, statewide stay-at-home orders, statewide business closings that were in effect, not just for days or weeks or months, but a year or more. And so part of the good news I can share with you is employers have learned how to operate safely, how to protect their employees and customers in COVID. I can tell you as a member of the Governor's Protect Michigan Commission, we encourage and support the effort to urge all adults to seriously consider taking the safe and available and free vaccines. It's proven now that the vaccines work. They are safe, they are reliable, they're effective. Most of the people who've been hospitalized in Michigan recently with the Delta variant are unvaccinated. That's a fact. It's not a coincidence. It's not an accident. It's a choice. We want to be respectful of the individual choices people make, but we know that those who have taken the vaccines are less likely to become ill, less likely to be hospitalized, and far less likely to die. So part of our message today is the fight against COVID isn't over. Michigan's job providers are doing their part. As employees, employers, we need to work together to power through this over the summer. We're still optimistic about Michigan's future, and I think we'll get things back on track later this summer or in the fall.
Absolutely. Optimism is good, but unfortunately, like you said, the fight is not over. And just a couple weeks ago, Governor Whitmer actually vetoed a bill that would have helped small businesses with tax breaks. So what is your view on that and her veto of it? Where does that leave you standing in the Michigan Chamber of Commerce?
I think another important lesson that we've seen here in Michigan and we're observing at the national level is our state constitution and our federal constitution protect liberty and freedom through a system of checks and balances with 3 branches of government. Obviously, whoever is our governor is a very important decision. The same applies at the federal level with whoever is our president. The challenge is that the executive branch does not have the authority to write law. It is the responsibility of members of the legislature and members of Congress. It's that system of checks and balances that we use to safeguard liberty and freedom. And I think we've seen instances here in Michigan where Governor Whitmer has exceeded her legislative authority. That's why the courts ruled that the 1945 Emergency Powers Law was not a proper vehicle for many of her orders. Yesterday at the national level, we saw President Biden say that his administration didn't have the authority to reimpose a moratorium on rents, and then the CDC went ahead and did it anyways. So we have to have checks and balances. Governors and presidents and mayors deserve extraordinary authority to act quickly in response to emergencies, but when a situation is in effect, not for hours or days or weeks, but months and months and months, we must have elected officials making public policy decisions. We need to see Congress and the president working together. We have to see the governor and the legislature working together. When the governor waits until after a bill is put on her desk, even bills with substantial bipartisan support in the House and the Senate, and then she vetoes that legislation for reasons that are hard to understand or not valid, that's a very negative, it's a very counterproductive situation. The governor's issued a lot of vetoes recently of good bills that would encourage job creation and economic growth. It's a pattern that we don't understand and frankly can't explain to chamber members. We hope that she'll reconsider and choose to work more openly earlier in the process with lawmakers. We work with Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate every day. If a piece of legislation encourages job creation and economic growth, that's good for all of us. The Michigan Chamber supports it, and we wish the governor would too.
Rich, earlier you touched on staffing issues that a lot of companies are having. Is there a solution to that? I mean, if there's so many people who are used to doing service industry jobs like restaurant jobs like that, and they just are deciding, look, the instability of that, not having benefits, not having a wage that's guaranteed, if they don't want to choose that kind of job anymore, how are we going to get past the staffing issue at so many service places such as restaurants?
Across the state, when we talk to chamber members in manufacturing, travel or tourism or agribusiness, there are a lot of businesses that could open more hours or take on more jobs if they only had more skilled workers. This is another area where Governor Whitmer has the right goal to substantially increase the number of Michiganders with a high school diploma and a license or a certificate or an associate's degree. I'm a college graduate. I'm a member of the CMU Board of Trustees. If your son or daughter wants to go to college, that's a wonderful thing, but it's not for everyone. The other challenge we have, though, in Michigan is the state and federal government continue to pay too many people too much money not to work. The legislature sent the governor a bill to stop Michigan's participation in the extra federal unemployment benefits. When you pay people an additional $300 a week to not work, many people will run the numbers and make a decision not to work. That is still a serious and ongoing problem. It's another area where the governor vetoed a good bill that would have encouraged people to return to work and help support businesses reopening. At the Michigan Chamber, we launched and led the campaign in cooperation with local chambers in Oakland County and across the state to safely reopen Michigan. That has to be our focus as we move forward together. Safely reopen Michigan, stay open, and create jobs and grow the economy.
Anyone who's gone out shopping to any kind of a store these days, you notice the prices of everything just seems to be going up by the month. Is that something that's having an effect on businesses such as restaurants that are purchasing supplies or a construction company that's purchasing building materials? Are those having an effect on businesses' ability to stay above water?
Yes, there were disruptions in the state and national and even international supply chains that are directly the result of a worldwide pandemic. Some of those situations are outside our control. Our members in manufacturing tell us they're working very hard to develop alternative sources of supply, but that's a challenge that may take weeks or months to unwind. Part of the difficulty, again, is when we do things at the state level that make it more difficult to meet that challenge. So we've got to focus on helping businesses stay open, encouraging unemployed workers to seek jobs, to make sure that they have the training they need. But we have to move away from this idea that the state and federal government should pay people indefinitely not to work. The rent moratorium that was reestablished yesterday without proper congressional authority is a great example of the state and federal government sending mixed messages. Many Michiganders received payments from the federal government that they didn't need or want because they were working. We should target the relief to people who need it the most. There's a growing concern in the business community that Congress and the president are now talking about spending trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. It used to be, you would say, well, $1 million is a lot of money. Then it was $1 billion. Now it is $1 trillion. There's a growing concern in the business community, whether you're a major corporation or a small business, that Congress and the president can't continue to borrow money, to print money without having an impact on inflation. Inflation is a cruel tax on senior citizens and low-income families who have a challenge in making ends meet. And we're encouraging Congress and the president and the governor and the legislature to be very careful on how they spend the additional state and federal funding that's available. Here in Lansing, state government is awash in billions of dollars in unanticipated revenue. If we spend that money wisely, we'll be okay. If we drop it out of airplanes and hope people will find it and spend it wisely, then that will be time and money wasted.
People do run the numbers. Sorry, I don't know. No, you're good. I just don't know if you can hear me there. But if people do run the numbers and decide that it is more financially beneficial for them to not work than go into work, what are some ways that businesses can incentivize their employees to come back to work rather than getting paid to not work?
Sometimes you'll hear a debate over the minimum wage. I can tell you from experience as an employer, we're in a very competitive job market here in the Lansing area. Employers throughout the Lansing area are paying far above the minimum wage to attract and keep good employees. Good employees are a key to running a successful business. And so we have to encourage education, job training, more workforce development, but we have to transition away from the pandemic to learning how to live with COVID as it evolves, getting back to work. We're not in favor of a vaccine mandate or mask mandates. We've seen real problems here in Michigan with top-down, one-size-fits-all government mandates. Employees and employers are in the best position to decide in the businesses that they own or where they work, how to keep the workplace safe for employees and how to keep businesses safe. I think sometimes politicians and bureaucrats forget that there's a dramatic difference between owning and operating a small business, a family-owned and operated business, or leading a global corporation. There's a world of difference in the impact on COVID in the workplace if you're at an auto plant as opposed to a small retail operation or a hotel or a restaurant. That's why guidelines are helpful, but we believe that employers need flexibility so that they can meet the unique needs of their employees, their customers, and their business.
Absolutely. Well, Rich, we do have to wrap it up, but thank you so much for chatting with us. Is there anything else you want to share before we have to let you go?
I would just encourage your listeners and viewers to visit michamber.com, where they can learn more about we can help move Michigan forward, and we're going to keep our focus on helping businesses succeed. We've got a lot of great members in Oakland County and throughout Southeast Michigan and across the state. We will defeat COVID. We will get back to a new normal, but we're going to keep Michigan moving forward, I promise.
Yes, we will. Love to hear it. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon again here. We are going to take a final quick break here and then come back and move to Royal Oak to talk about some stuff going on there. So we will be right back.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line, for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sofia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 89.3 Lakes FM, and 88.1 The Biff, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 AT&T, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. So when you hear the name Royal Oak, a lot of people think about the downtown area with its great bars and restaurants and shops. I know that's what I think about. My brother lives down there, so I spend a lot of time out there. But another great thing Royal Oak offers is its fantastic parks. And joining us now on the Oakland County Megacast is Aaron Filipski, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, from the Director of Recreation and Public Service for the City of Royal Oak. So, hi Aaron, good morning. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hi, Erica and Larry. Thanks for having me. And you got my name right on the first try, so kudos to you for that. Yeah, I'm happy to talk with you about our parks. As you know, that's one of our signature amenities here in Royal Oak. We have 51 parks now, if you include Normandy Oaks, which I'd like to talk about later. There's lots of great recreation opportunities there. And also, I was hoping for the opportunity to talk about our tree planting program that we are implementing this fall. It's a supplemental tree program that we are partnering with Oakland County on to kind of make a big impact with tree planting on street sides.
Yeah, the opportunity is yours. Tell us more about the tree planting program.
Sure, I'll start with that then. Yeah, so the Oakland County Office of Economic Development and the Water Resource Council and the Board of Commissioners all pitched in some funding to work with community partners that are part of the Coon Drain District to encourage plantings on roadsides for a number of reasons. The first really to provide character to neighborhoods, but most importantly, they have a really beneficial effect for mitigating stormwater runoff by increasing impervious area and sort of soaking up some of the rainwater and allowing some of the drainage to slow down during peak flows. So, and you know, that works mutually beneficial for the drain district, but also for our community because trees are a big deal here. And it's something the community really values. So that we can partner with this and make a big impact is something we're excited about. For us, it's going to involve planting 200 trees this fall. And we wanted to make an impact in such that way that we could just find 200 locations throughout the city to plant these, but we wanted to use data to kind of drive where we were going to place these. So working with a staff team, we've identified a couple of areas, both in the north and south end of the city, where data indicates that there is lacking tree canopy and also based on claims that have been from flooding, from rainwater events. So we've identified a couple of areas, and we're going to take those 200 trees and kind of concentrate them in there, and hopefully make a noticeable impact this fall, not only to the aesthetics of the community, but longer term and our ability to handle stormwater.
Well, that is absolutely fantastic. And moving from that to Normandy Oaks Park, which I know we also want to talk about. You know, we're so used to talking about all the great parks that we have here in West Bloomfield, but in Royal Oak, Normandy Oaks Park seems to have something for everyone. So tell us a little bit about that, the amenities, and even the nonprofit Bees in the D, them installing 2 honeybee hives. You know, we've had Bees on the D on to talk to us before, so we want to hear all about it. Let's dive in.
Yeah, it really is. You described it pretty well. It's got something for everybody there. I mean, I have to say kudos to the community to say, let's keep this a park. It could have been any other number of developments potentially, but the fact that we preserved it, we've got 2 areas of the park. The western side of the park is kind of more of an active area, and that's where we have play structures, actually a pretty impressive play structure, and most importantly, the biggest, most popular feature, it's occupied every day, is our new splash pad. We also have amenities there for picnics, a covered shelter there, 2 premier soccer fields, which are in the stage of development right now. And so that's kind of the active area. There's picnic amenities there as well. So really you could go as a family or just by yourself and walk around and have a nice time. And then the eastern side of the park is what we made we call it there's a specific term for it, the Oak Savanna habitat restoration. And that is taking what used to be that golf course and restoring it back to what it was before it was cultivated for the golf course. And that meant that we were retaining and planting native trees. A lot of that area, there's paths that go through there, so you can walk through and have a really enjoyable walk in the middle of a city. It's kind of hard to believe when you're in the middle of it where you're actually at. But you can walk through, enjoy that, and at the edges, it's largely what might look at first glance to be overgrown is actually just allowing the habitat to develop as it would naturally. And the point of that was to create home for the animals that like that sort of thing, and it's worked. It's developed. You know, having just opened, I'm really surprised to see the amount of wildlife we see in there. There's turtles, hawks, snakes, herons, and some really cool, unique features. I mean, there's a couple of ponds, and as I mentioned, the wildflowers and the wild grasses. We also have a vernal pool, which is an interesting feature. That's similar to a pond, but it comes and goes seasonally, and it provides a place that's usually devoid of fish, so small amphibians can develop, kind of like a nursery for amphibians, where they're not preyed upon, and then they can make their way to the larger ponds. And it's amazing, even during the course of the development, to see how these little critters found home there. And I walk the park quite frequently. You'd have to try to not see some sort of an animal walking through there. So that's the eastern end of the park, and that we didn't build that up to be another field, a play field or something, that we left that as it is. Really a gem, and I would recommend anybody go there. You mentioned the bees. Yes, we did partner with Bees in the D to provide pollinators. These 2 hives we have there, and I don't recall the number, but tens of thousands of bees in any case. So those are there. We'll get a bit of that honey when it's done. I don't know if they'll produce much this year, but maybe next year. But more importantly, we're just contributing to biodiversity and encouraging that sort of environmental stewardship. And in a lot of ways, this is leading the way locally anyway on those efforts. We're really proud of it. And if you haven't seen it yet, obviously go play in the splash pad or do those things, but you can't go to Normandy Oaks Park without walking those trails and really taking it in.
Well, I love seeing how passionate you are about this. It really shows, and I'm definitely excited to go check it out. As I said, I spend a lot of time in Royal Oak, so now I have something new to do. But also, joining us here, aside from Larry and I, we have Calvin Brown, who's actually from Royal Oak. So I'm going to let him chime in and ask some questions about his hometown.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about it. I just drove by Normandy Oaks Park, seeing it after a large chunk of the construction is done, and I was taken aback. It was so beautiful. I noticed the bridge, and it got me thinking, out of 51 parks in Royal Oak, I'm pretty sure this might be one of the only ones that has water at it. Do you know if that's correct?
I believe that to be true. Yeah, I mean, I guess in the springtime, our residents might tell you all of our parks have water just from drainage. But yeah, you're right. With intention, that's the only one that has those sorts of water features.
Wow, that's awesome. What other were there other kind of design aspects that you were trying, or that everyone was trying to make sure was the first? This park has the first this, the first that, because it seems like it's a big milestone. Like, it's a huge park near the northern end of Royal Oak. Like over there, the parks start to get a little bigger, but not anywhere near that big.
No, so I guess it's a first in that regard, just by its sheer size. We're talking on the order of 40 acres. So yeah, that makes it unique. The water stuff that you mentioned is really a first. And actually, I can't speak with 100% authority on this, but in terms of like the partnership with Oakland County, which helped develop this and provided a lot of funding for the habitat restoration. It's definitely, I would say, is one of the first of its type in the middle of an urban area, at least in Oakland County, that I'm aware of. You can get that when you go to certain parts of Oakland County in the more rural parts. Certainly, you can see a lot of that. But being where it's located, as I mentioned previously, is certainly unique to Normandy Oaks.
So I want to talk a little bit more specifically about this splash pad, because we recently in West Bloomfield have a new splash pad up, and I'm curious how the one in Royal Oak compares to this one. So can people of all ages go to the splash pad, or is it more so for little kids? What does it look like? Do we have water slides, little, sprinklers? Tell us more about it.
Yeah, it is open to everybody of all ages. As it stands now, it's mostly kids and parents watching from the sidelines. Although, a side note, we haven't developed it yet, but we're considering, I think we're going to do this as a 50 and over day, because you do watch some people saying that would be fun to go play in, but I think they might be a little intimidated to go out in there with the kids. So stay tuned maybe for something on that. But in terms of the features, yeah, it's got your typical squirt splash type features, but the thing that people love the most, there's no slides, but there is one of those buckets that fills and tips periodically. And there's always a crowd underneath it. And boy, that thing can't fill fast enough. At certain times of the day, depending on what kind of water usage there is around the area, it might or might not fill as quickly as normal. And we get calls on that all the time. That's what they insist on. But there's always a crowd there. That's the big draw.
It's so funny you say that, because when we talk to our parks directors here in West Bloomfield, they always say that is their favorite thing about our splash pad, and how much people love that is that bucket. And I remember being a little kid, and any water park I would go to or splash pad, just standing under that and being so excited. But I know there really is so much exciting stuff going on in Royal Oak right now, and I had things that I wanted to ask you about, but what else do you want to talk about? What more is there going on that maybe we haven't covered in these last few minutes that we have to chat?
Well, geez, at least on my end, what I would feel most comfortable talking about in a length, those are the biggies. That park has been an ongoing project, and now this tree planting has been, there's other projects going on. There's a downtown park, Centennial Commons, which is being constructed currently. That's going to be another great feature in the heart of downtown that will offer all sorts of programming opportunities for us that we're still sort of exploring about how that's going to play out. But the work is underway. The old buildings, as you know, it's located on the site of the old City Hall and Police Station. Those have been demolished, and it's looking like a park. I mean, it's mostly dirt now, but it's being built up. So we're excited to see progress on that. And we expect by late this fall, substantial completion on that park. So I say that would be the next big exciting thing that our residents can look forward to.
Well, that is fantastic. There seems to be countless exciting things going on in Royal Oak, and we're looking forward to it. I will definitely be heading out to the park. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. It has been great talking with you, and we look forward to touching base again soon as the development of all these things continues. We'll definitely have you back on. So it's been wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right. Well, we are actually going to take one final quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast before we're going to end the Oakland County Megacast actually a couple minutes early today, but it has been so nice talking. You're watching and listening to us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 The Biff, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 AT&T, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Again, I am Erica Jones here with Larry Nyland and Calvin Brown. Have a fantastic Thursday.